Hello, my name is Jeremy Bramwell, and welcome to Choosing Your Qualified Provider. As I've stated earlier, there are 6 qualified persons under the Strata Property Act as of July the 1st, 2025: a professional engineer, an architect, an accredited appraiser, Canadian Institute, certified reserve planner, professional quantity surveyor, or an applied science technologist. But within these 6 designations, there's actually subgroups and nuances that need to be taken into account. So first, we understand the qualified person, called designated persons in other areas, other jurisdictions, are those under the provincial legislation to be deemed qualified to complete a depreciation report. They must sign the report and take responsibility for the contents of the report. For example, an ACI is a member of the Appraisal Institute of Canada and is qualified in the legislation in BC and generally across Canada. So outside the qualified persons, we have candidates. So a candidate is somebody in training to become a designated person or a qualified person. They can work on the file and sign it under the supervision of the designated person. Co-signing is when a qualified person in the report agrees with the conclusion of work completed by a candidate or another third party. Both parties sign the report, taking equal responsibility. Inspectors are not in the same professional organization as a designated or qualified people. So, due to a specific skill set or remote location, inspectors are allowed by some organizations to complete an inspection that their member signs. The inspector must have insurance to complete the work with that professional organization. Also, the inspector must be named for what work they completed, but they won't sign the report. In general, inspectors are limited to the physical inspection portion of the report. Specialists have unique skill sets, like roof inspectors or thermographic imaging consultants. They provide an independent report on their area of expertise. The report conclusions are added to the depreciation report as part of the physical and financial analysis. Most people would be surprised to learn that most of the providers in British Columbia don't follow any reserve planning standards. Most designated groups have a code of conduct or ethical standards. When I talk about reserve planning standards, I'm referring to specific standards for completing depreciation reports. The only specific depreciation report standards in Canada are from the Appraisal Institute of Canada as part of CUSPAP, that's the Canadian Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. The US-based Reserve Specialist designation follow the National Reserve Study Standards, or the NRSS, and those with the PRA designation follow the APRA standards of practice. These standards are the most comprehensive in North America. They're a little more comprehensive than the Appraisal Institute of Canada. The Real Estate Institute of Canada, the REIC, teaches the accepted methodology for completing depreciation reports, but have no set standards. Those are the certified reserve planners. Here we're going to do a fast review of the 6 designations by description, candidates, reserve planning standards, inspection specialists, co-signing, and liability insurance. So there are 6 groups of engineers, but not all of them are qualified to do a depreciation report. The most common engineers seen doing them are civil engineers, which include the subgroup of structural engineers. Other types might be mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and in some cases where we have rural wastewater treatment centers, chemical engineers. The candidates, or the undesignated engineers, are called EITs, or engineer in training, and we see a lot of them doing depreciation reports. They must, as you can see by the co-signing section, an EIT or other inspection specialist doing the actual analysis is the common case there. The candidate's work must be co-signed by a supervising designated engineer or a PEng. Now, engineers have no reserve planning standards publicly available, and I've never found any. So the standards that they use are more corporate based. Inspection specialists that are usually affiliated with engineers are BES, so that's building envelope specialists. That would be if you were doing a BECA or something. An applied science technologist, a certified technician, registered roof observers, and elevator consultants. These are the groups that usually work with engineers and others. Engineers are self-regulating and they have to have liability insurance for doing any work. So in summary, engineers are qualified to do the work. They have lots of inspection specialists that can help them along, but they don't follow common standards, which can be a problem when lenders and insurers are doing risk-based analysis. Architects are educated in the design of buildings to meet the building codes as well as do restoration and renovations. Interim architects are the candidates. That's what they call themselves. There are no planning standards. There are no inspection specialists that are part of their association. The interim architects, they're co-signed by the supervising architect like everybody else. And architects are self-regulated and they must have liability insurance for the work that they complete. So they're very much like the engineers in that methodology. Accredited Appraisers Canadian Institute, or AACI, is the most senior designation across Canada for the Appraisal Institute of Canada. There are candidates who are trainees. They're commonly not used initially for depreciation report assignments as they do not have the required inspection experience unless they're going out with more experienced appraisers, because this is a specialty area and can take a little while to learn. Now, the ASC also has a policy of allowing approved inspectors to complete physical inspections, but really under very limited circumstances. The Appraisal Institute of Canada is also the only organization out of the 6 that has specific reserve planning standards. In 2014, the Institute instituted standards regarding reserve planning as part of the governing document called the Canadian Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. Now, under the co-signing rule, all candidates must be co-signed by a senior appraiser, but also in the case of CRAs, which are certified residential appraisers, in order to meet the Strata Property Act, their reports also have to be co-signed by an AACI to meet the legislation. The Appraisal Institute of Canada is self-insured with a liability insurance program who complete all work as outlined in CUSPAP, which reserve planning covers. The Real Estate Institute of Canada has an educational program for reserve planning called the Certified Reserve Planner, or CRP. This designation is one of the 6 that is approved under the Strata Property Act. As you can see by the slide, in the last few years, there was a bit of a problem with the education program, but they've since fixed it up, and all the education is done through UBC. Now, this designation doesn't have a trainee or candidate program or any inspection specialists. There's no co-signing. And as far as insurance goes, they must get their own private insurance in order to use the designation. One thing I will say is that the CRP designation is a designation that focuses on how to do depreciation reports, But as far as the timing of this video, there are no specific standards on how to do them. They've got technical bulletins, but there's nothing in writing that says that anybody with a CRP has to follow the education provided. Quantity surveyors are usually involved in construction. They manage the contractual and financial side and lifespan analysis of the building under construction, but are rarely involved in existing projects, except if there's going to be a major renovation in the building. They do have a candidate system, and as in all candidate systems, it has to be co-signed by a senior designated person. There are no reserve planning standards. There's no inspection specialists. The other designation they have is what we call a CEC, or Construction Estimator Certified, but this is only for cost estimation only, nothing to do with inspection. Like all other professionals, they have a liability program for the services that they provide. The Applied Science Technologist designation is one of several held by the Applied Science Technologists and Technicians of BC, or the ASTTBC. This group is something less than an engineer. They're the technologists and technicians, which generally support engineering firms. So the ASCT designation allows for the specialties of architecture, civil, construction, electrical, electronics, instrumentation, mechanical, petroleum, and technology. So it's quite a wide-ranging designation. When you're looking for this in your depreciation report requirements, mainly focus on those who have an architectural, civil, or construction specialties. Now, the ASTTBC has two reserve planning designations that are not recognized under the Strata Property Act. And one is the Registered Reserve Fund Analyst, and the other one is the Registered Reserve Fund Analyst Limited, which has more dealings with the financial side. They are not recognized as being qualified, so that's something to keep in mind from the ASTTBC. There are candidates. Again, there's no reserve planning standards. There's no inspection specialist tied to this designation. Candidates must be co-signed by a senior applied science technologist. And again, ASTTBC members have their own insurance program. Now that we've gone over the 6 groups of designated or qualified persons, let's look at the reality of the situation. The default for many strata councils are engineers, but this is overkill for wood frame townhomes, low to mid-rise apartment buildings, industrial complexes, and bare land developments. Applied science technologists are usually employed by engineering firms. Those engineering firms are constantly looking for new business. So that is the goal of many of the depreciation reports that we have seen. While most of the other providers just usually want to complete the report and go on to the next client. These would be the CRPs and the ACIs. Architects and quantity surveyors do not do depreciation reports as a rule. To give you an example, in the last decade, actually 15 years, I don't think I've ever seen a depreciation report done by an architect or a quantity surveyor. Most certified reserve planners are also appraisers, although not all of them are ACIs. A certified residential appraiser, that's a CRA, who's also a CRP, cannot do depreciation reports by themselves. Now, we get a lot of questions as a provider. There's 3 biggies that are asked all the time. First of all, do I need an engineer? Second, when can I use a non-engineer provider? And 3, when do I need a specialist? When do I need an engineer? The answer to this question is based on if the strata corporation needs invasive testing. In other words, Are there structural issues? Are there known or suspected mold issues? If the answer is yes, then you must use an engineer. In both of these cases, obtaining a BECA or a building envelope condition assessment before the depreciation report is the best option. That way, the cost of the work can be put into the depreciation report, so it is reflective of reality. What happens sometimes is the depreciation report is done, and then they do a BECA the next year. It comes out, let's say there's $1 million worth of work required. It isn't in the depreciation report, and they come back to us and they go, please, can you update the depreciation report? And we say, fine, but there's an additional fee. So, and it's time, more time again. So what I would say to people is you really need to get the ducks in order before the depreciation report is done when we're talking about structural issues or mold issues or anything else that would normally trigger a BECA report. And these are some examples. As you can see in the lateral picture in the stucco, there's a 2-story break in the acrylic stucco where water can get in. That was a building that we did, and we told them to go and find an engineer. There's one of a hallway that we looked at as well. That is black mold that is all over the wall. Again, we told them to go find a engineer to take care of that before the depreciation was done. The third picture is there was a brick building that we were looking at, and there was moss and vegetation growing in between the bricks. We told the strata at that time that they may want to go take a look at that as well with an engineering firm. The second question is, when can I use a non-engineered provider? Now, if you're in a high rise, engineers and architects, if you can find them, are best qualified due to the complex operations, as the technology can be also very complex. And this is not only like elevators and chillers, but the electrical systems that are in high rises can be very, very tricky. In addition, replacement costs can change dramatically per floor. There have been studies that said that the cost per window to replace in a high rise can go up to double on a per window basis from if you have a 20-story building to a 40-story building. Non-engineers are best qualified for bare land, townhomes, and low-rise buildings. It's basic construction and basic technology. Replacement costs are generally very static, meaning that they don't change too much. When do I need a specialist? Well, in this video, we're going to discuss 2 situations. The first one is the roofing inspector. Now, depreciation inspectors are generalists who look at roofs for pooling, seam breakage, or bubbles, indicating air gaps, among other issues. Roofing inspectors do a more comprehensive review of the above and tend to inspect items such as slopes that depreciation report inspectors do not measure. If this is an issue, we really suggest that you get a registered roofing observer that has been trained by the Roofing Contractors Association of BC. Elevator consultants are another big issue. Depreciation report providers do not evaluate elevators because only provincially licensed inspectors can assess the condition of an elevator. Unless there's an additional report from an elevator consultant, it is legal and dangerous for a depreciation provider to extend the life of an elevator beyond what is normally expected. I hope you enjoyed this video. Strata Reserve Planning is the oldest and largest depreciation provider. We've got staff in our 3 offices in the Lower Mainland, Vancouver Island, and the Okanagan, in North Okanagan. If you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call or to send us an email to clientcare@stratareserveplanning.com. If you enjoyed this video and want to keep notified, please subscribe at our YouTube channel, which is YouTube@Reserve Planning. Thank you very much and have a good day.